What's up everyone? My name is Marie. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a brand new video. In today's video, I'm going to guide you step by step through the process of building the perfect home in The Sims 4. Whether you're a complete beginner or if you just want to brush up your skills, I'm just going to take you through the entire process. Before we jump into this, I just want to mention that this is going to be a very long video, so to make things easier, I have divided this video into different chapters. So feel free to skip around or just watch the entire video for the building experience. And then a little disclaimer, this is going to be my personal approach to building in The Sims 4. I know there are many different ways, none of them are incorrect, but this is just what I personally like to do, things that work for me, and I'll be sharing that with you. So I hope it helps you. A common question I get, for starters, is where do you find inspiration for your builds? And my go-to is definitely Pinterest. It's full of ideas for literally anything. I mainly use Pinterest for exterior photos. So as you can see, my whole algorithm here on Pinterest is all houses plus just some random ads for things, but you can see that there's definitely a lot of like different exterior type things. So I always look for exteriors on Pinterest. So if I'm building a suburban home, which is what we're doing today, I'll search for something like suburban home exterior. And as you can see, there is literally a bunch of different sketches, pictures, things that you can pull inspiration from. And the great thing about Pinterest is that you can actually save things to inspiration boards so that you can refer back to them later. So if you have any boards created on Pinterest, you'll find them here, and I will just save it to my Sims 4 board, and then I can always find it back later. It's just very convenient. And I feel like the key to this is to balance your inspiration picture with your own creativity. It can be tricky to recreate real life things in The Sims because of like size proportions and other types of restrictions that you kind of have in the game. So I would say use the picture as a guide and adapt it to make it your own and to make it work in the game. So I just came across this specific picture of a suburban house that I really like and that I think is going to be good for today's video. So this is what we will be using today. Okay, so once you've found inspiration and chosen a lot, it is time to start building. For this video, by the way, I'll only be using base game, so anything that I'm using, you have available to you as well. Before diving in though, let's go over some key build mode tools. First of all, there is the camera mode. So up here in camera controls, you can actually change the camera that you're using. I personally prefer the Sims 3 camera over the Sims 4 camera, which is the default setting, because I feel like the Sims 3 camera just offers more freedom. I can zoom around more easily, I can tilt. It's easier to use in my opinion. So you can very easily switch from the Sims 4 camera to the Sims 3 camera right here. That said though, if you are comfortable using the Sims 4 camera, if you prefer that over the Sims 3 one, that is obviously perfectly fine, and by all means keep using it. Then there is the rooms and the walls. If you're in build mode and you press B on your keyboard, it will automatically take you to the walls and the rooms. You can obviously create walls in straight lines, just like this. Doesn't have to be straight. You can also do diagonals, clearly. Or you can select the room tool and place boxes like this. I definitely prefer using the room tool when I'm starting out with the build because it immediately offers you a certain structure that I feel like is just easy to tweak later on. It's especially helpful when you're unsure of the final shape of the house. It's essentially like molding clay. That's kind of what it feels like to me, weirdly enough. Then of course, there are some very important cheats. First of all, the move objects cheat. That one allows you to place items freely, basically anywhere you want, even in spots that the game normally restricts, which is great for aesthetics, but it can make stuff unusable in the game for your Sims. So just beware of that. To activate cheats, you have to pull up the cheat bar, if you will. So press Control-Shift-C on your keyboard and you can see that this little bar here opens up where you can type stuff. First, you're going to have to activate your cheats, and you do that by typing testing cheats on. You can see that cheats are now enabled. And then to activate move objects, you're going to type bb.moveobjects on and press enter. And you can see that the Move Objects cheat is now activated. Then there are some very important hotkeys that we can quickly go over. So before I start building, before I do anything, I always press F5 on my keyboard. This visually does nothing, but it actually enables quarter tile placement, as opposed to half tile placement that the game offers without F5 enabled. So if I turn it off, you can see that this chair snaps to like half tiles on the grid. But if I press F5, you can see that it snaps to quarter tiles. So that allows you to place it a lot more precisely. If you want to place items completely off the grid, hold down Alt on your keyboard, and as you can see, you can now freely place it without it snapping to the grid at all. Additionally, you can hold down the Shift key to place multiple copies of an item a lot more quickly, like this. If you just hold Shift down while placing, it'll just automatically duplicate. Then another popular one is sizing things up and down. You can do that by using the left or right square bracket key on your keyboard. For some people, I believe it's Shift and the preferred square bracket key, depending on if you want to size it up or down. So this works differently, I feel like, on certain keyboards, but for me, it's just the square bracket keys. And if you want to raise things or lower things, you can hold down Shift and press 9 if you want to raise something, and hold down Shift and press 0 continuously if you want to lower it down. So that's it for the most important hotkeys. So we have covered all the basics and we can actually get started now. So let's build the shell. Just to remind you, we're using this inspiration picture that we found on Pinterest earlier. So it's going to be a cute family suburban house, let's say 3 bedrooms, but honestly, we'll just see how we go. So this is where I essentially just start to mold my clay. So I will start by putting down the base structure of the house. And this is where we will later add our bump outs to. We can make it a little bigger, and we want it to be a 2-story house. So I can very easily just select this room, copy it over using this copy button, and place it on top. There we go. Very easy. One thing I like to keep in mind is I don't want there to be too many long flat walls, and that is where our bump outs will come in handy. Here you can see that I'm adding on extra bump outs to the main body of the house, creating a balanced shell. As I'm figuring out where I want those bump outs to go, I'm looking at the reference picture that we're using while keeping in mind what works for my version of this build. So I think I'm happy with the main shape of the house now, but it's definitely missing some porches. So to add one, we can very easily just select this flat square in the walls and empty rooms menu, place it down, and then drag it to size. I think I want something like that. That's pretty cute. We can also just add a foundation to the house very easily by selecting a room. It really doesn't matter which room you select. We could even just select this porch, click this up and down arrow kind of thing in the middle, and just drag it up to the height where you want it. I feel like maybe 1 higher could be pretty cute for this house. And you can always adjust that later, so that's very easy to do. Actually, let's keep it like this. Now for covered porches, you can very easily add a ceiling by selecting this yellow outline and select Build Ceiling. There you go. That's gonna make roofing a lot easier later. I also want a small porch in the back. I'm not sure if I want it to be here, but I'm just going to add one right now, and we can always move it around later if it doesn't end up working out for the floor plan. But for now, that is pretty cute. Moving on to everyone's favorite part of building, roofing. Roofing actually is one of my favorite things when it comes to building. I know it's weird, but I just really enjoy it. You can obviously go as crazy and complicated with all these different roof types as you want, but today I promise we're going to keep it very simple and basic. So similar to creating the shell, I like to start by roofing the main portion, or like the main body of the house. I know that sounds weird, but you can probably kind of tell what I mean. This rectangular shape right here is essentially the base of the house, and that is where we added all these bump outs to give it shape, and that way it still kind of structurally makes sense. So we're going to roof that portion first, and that will usually be the largest, most continuous roof piece. We're going to use a gabled roof for this portion of the house, and we'll have it face sideways. You can actually rotate it by pressing the right and left shift arrow buttons on your keyboard. The reason why I place it sideways like this is because visually that just looks more natural. If I were to rotate it like this, let me just drag it into place. Right off the bat, you can tell it works, but it's kind of odd looking. Obviously, you can just lower it and that will look already a lot better. So it's definitely not wrong to do it this way. It obviously also depends on the style of house you're going for. But personally, I like to place them sideways, especially when it comes to suburban houses and referring back to our inspiration picture, which also has a roof like this. So like I already showed you, once the roof is placed, you can adjust the height using this arrow. And you can also tweak the eaves by dragging them out or dragging them in. You can go no eaves for a more modern look if that's what you're going for. And a quick tip, if you hold down Shift while dragging the eaves, they will only go for one side at a time, as opposed to two sides at a time when you do not hold down Shift. And that can definitely be very helpful in certain situations. For more precise adjustment, press Shift C on your keyboard and you can see how extra controls for fine tuning just kind of popped up. So we can make it slope in or out. We could go like this. If you wanted to have like a very whimsical cottagey look and feel, you could do that. You could make it entirely round, which is kind of fun for like barn builds and stuff like that. And again, if you hold down Alt and then make it higher or lower, you can see how it doesn't snap to the grid. If you do not hold down Alt, it does snap to specific increments. But again, if you hold down Alt, you'll have a lot more freedom, which is nice in certain situations. But let me just quickly go back to the type of roof that we're going for, which is this gabled roof. And I think I'm going to make it slightly lower, just a tad, maybe like this. As for the rest of the roofing, follow the bump outs. So for the largest bump outs, for example, this one out front here, I like to just use smaller variants of the main roof so I could very easily copy this over and place this one facing forward like this to create that classic suburban look. Now, as you can see, we have got ourselves a little eave situation here. One thing you can do to avoid this, or to embrace it, I should say, you could drag this roof out to the back. Even though we do not have a bump out here, it can sometimes look nice to just have this roof continue to the back, if that makes any sense. I think you can kind of tell that this looks sort of natural. If you do not want that though, but you also do not want these eaves going halfway through the other roof, there is a little trick that I will show you. So we're going to make this roof a little smaller, and we're also going to drag only this side, so the left side, the way we're facing it right now, we're going to make these eaves disappear, which we can do by holding down Shift and dragging them in. It only affects this side, not the front in this case. Now, what we can do to fill this void right here is we can copy over this roof by using the copy tool, placing it down, dragging it backwards so there's no awkward gap where the roofs connect. And then we can make these eaves for this portion of the roof disappear by dragging them in. And as you can see, it now looks pretty smooth. So I would say that that looks pretty good. And now for the smaller bump outs, we can use little accent roof pieces, if you will. For example, a half gabled roof, which is this one down here, looks pretty good on porches. So we can place that down, make it a little bit smaller and lower, and just kind of drag it into place. You can see that we have some clipping eaves again. So for porches, usually to make things easier, I just drag in all the eaves to make it look smooth, and it's just easier to work with that way. I'm quickly going through and placing some roofs on the remaining bump outs. For the bump outs on the side of the house, I'm using gabled roofs, placing them sideways, continuing the main roof line that we have going on. The two bump outs facing forward are also getting forward-facing gabled roofs to make everything look streamlined. Now for this little roof right here, you can see we have a similar issue, but for this one, I think I'm going to actually drag it out so that it connects with this roof on the side bump out over here. As you can see, it's nice and connected and it looks pretty smooth. And then I'm just going to copy this porch roof over to the back It's actually the same size, so we don't even have to adjust it. When it comes to roofing, I like to ask myself, can the rain fall off the roof? I know that sounds weird and ridiculous, and it actually is not an issue at all in The Sims. Water doesn't get stuck anywhere on your roof. You really don't have to think about that stuff. But keeping that in mind does make the roof look more natural, in my opinion. For example, if I were to connect, let's say, this roof in this way, you can kind of see how it creates this gap in between the wall and the roof. And it just feels like it doesn't make sense. Now, in The Sims, you can go as crazy as you want. If you want to have whimsical roofs like this, by all means, go crazy because it's a game and we want to have fun with it. But if you want your roofs to look natural and more believable, I suggest keeping in mind if the rain has anywhere to go. Okay, so I will say this house is looking pretty cute. You can tell if you remember the reference picture that it already looks pretty different, which is what I mean by using a reference photo to guide you, but also trust your own creativity and adjust it to your preferences and to what works in the game. So while this looks cute, we have yet to create a floor plan. And to be honest, this is the thing that I struggle with the most when building. It's just a lot of trial and error, honestly. Basically, I'm just bumbling around, messing with walls until I find something that works. It's tough to give very specific tips that will always work because each house is just so different. But here are just a few things that you can keep in mind. First of all, I just delete all the walls that are left over from creating the shell, so we have a blank canvas to work with. And if I'm struggling to find a way to start, I will just try to place the staircase first and plan around that. So for this house, maybe the staircase could look cute somewhere around here, or maybe like this, because then you can kind of tell that there is naturally just sort of a room over here in this front area. And I think that that could work pretty nicely. Also, by the way, a hotkey I haven't even mentioned yet is G on your keyboard to toggle off the grid, or toggle it on, if you will. If I'm working on floor plans, I like to have the grid on because it's just a little bit easier to keep track of size proportions and stuff. So that's what I like to do, but you can easily toggle it off by just pressing G on your keyboard. And annoyingly enough, I don't really have a lot of tips for floor planning that are very specific other than just like, you gotta trust the process and trial and error is okay. What I do like to keep in mind is routing, just for the overall flow of the house. For example, right off the bat, I think I want this to be the kitchen and dining, and this can be an extra bedroom or a study of some kind. And I think it would be pretty nice to have a door going into this study right here, but then we can also have a door off of the kitchen right here, so it just flows a little bit more easily. So if this is going to be the kitchen and this is going to be the living room, I think what I would like to do is place an archway right here so that it doesn't feel too closed off, but we still have separate rooms. This bump out feels a little weird. I think it would be nice to have the living room situated in this main area. I think the front door is going to go here. That would be visually kind of pleasing for the curb appeal. So I think that's what we're gonna do. So that makes that we have this little room off to the side here. And what I think we could do is we could create a small hallway leading into a hall bathroom, which is going to be pretty spacious, but that is definitely something we could do. So let me copy over this archway right here and place it here. Sometimes I just like to use archways instead of doors to keep the overall flow just a little bit more natural and have it look a little bit more open. And then we can put a door into the bathroom right there. So for a downstairs floor plan, I think this looks pretty good. Sometimes when I'm messing around with the floor plan, I like to place filler furniture just to keep track of said size proportions. And it already helps me get an idea of the final layout that I want to go for. So let's say I think it would be nice to have a living room sort of situated like this, maybe with a nice 3-seater couch and then also a love seat. And now that I'm placing that, I think it would be kind of cute to maybe have a fireplace right here. That would be sort of cozy. I think we'll have a kitchen right here. Not exactly sure what shape the kitchen's going to be, but I feel like we're definitely going to use this back wall for that. And since we have a porch here, I think I want to have a sliding door or a glass door or something like that over here. And that means that we could probably have a dining area, a little cramped maybe, but I don't really mind that for cute family suburban homes like this one. And now let's take a look at the upstairs floor plan. I'm creating the upstairs floor plan around the staircase that we placed. The second floor is pretty spacious, so I ended up creating 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, one of them being an ensuite for the main bedroom. I also placed a half wall around the staircase. You can just use a fence for this, but I like blending in the half wall using matching wallpaper instead. Next up, after the floor plan is done, are windows, doors, and other exterior details. I always wait with windows until the layout is done because doing it beforehand for me personally usually leads to having to redo the window situation later on to make it work with the floor plan. Also, pre-placed windows before doing the floor plan kind of interrupts my flow and my thought process when I'm working on the floor plan, if that makes sense. For some people, it works the other way around. They like to place the windows first and then work off of that for their floor plan, which also obviously is a way to do it. For me personally, I do it afterwards. I do like a lot of natural light in my homes, so I like to place a lot of windows usually, and I definitely go overboard sometimes. But it's good to keep in mind that wall space is nice to have when it comes to your interior later on, so that you can place bookcases and just like taller items against the wall. So we're gonna keep that in mind. First of all, we need a front door. This is one of my favorite base game front doors. It's just very simple and easy to work with, and I think it looks good on a suburban house like this. And we can place it in the middle of the porch, kind of center it with the porch like this. I think that will work out perfectly fine. You can actually alt place windows and doors like you can furniture, which is very helpful, but I actually like to make use of the grid when it comes to placing windows. It's just a little bit easier to make sure that all your windows are on exactly the same height, and the spacing is just a little bit easier to keep track of. But yeah, if you do have little areas of your house where it's tough to use the grid, you can very easily hold down Alt and just place it freely. Now, for a little bit of curb appeal, I think it would be nice to use some windows with shutters, especially right here. This roof is snapping to that a little bit, so we can just lower that down. I don't mind it too much though, so we could just keep it something like this. And then how about we use that same window down there? We need some windows upstairs, so let's see how I have those rooms situated. If we do it like this, that works, but I like for the front door to kind of be centered with those windows on the second floor. So I think this would work. For these rooms, we can very easily place windows like this. I think that works out nicely. So when it comes to placing windows, I like to simultaneously keep an eye on the exterior, but also the interior at the same time. When it comes to placing windows in the kitchen, I actually like to fully make use of the grid and place windows only on full tiles like this, as opposed to quarter tiles like this or half tiles like this. That way I'll know for sure that my windows will line up with my cabinets. It does give me a lot less freedom for window placement, but I know in the end it will end up looking good with the counters and the overhead cabinets if I end up using those, and that's just gonna make me happy. So that's what I do. And I think that looks good for the kitchen. I'm going through and placing windows for all the rooms using the same method I described earlier, keeping both the interior and exterior in mind. It's helpful to keep an eye on the layout while putting in windows. I will say though, how it looks on the exterior is more important to me for most areas, except for the kitchen. For some areas, I'm adjusting the roof height as we go so that I'm actually able to place windows. Okay, so after the windows are done, I like to go crazy with exterior details like flower boxes like this, for example. I think that would look pretty cute. You can also do this after you've done the wallpaper, which we are actually going to do next. But to just get a general idea, you can just place down some cute items. Maybe a chimney, that looks pretty cute. A key feature is I like to place columns on the corners of my builds to just give it some extra structure and detail. So I'll just kind of go around, and wherever it looks natural, I will just place some columns. You can drag them all the way up to the second level. And obviously we're going to need some columns here as well by the porches, maybe on these corners here. And I don't place them on all the corners because, for example, what would annoy me is this column right here is all the way dragged up to the second floor, but right here I cannot do the same thing because there is a roof in the way. So normally what I do then is I just delete the columns for those corners for that structure of the build. So that's the main structure of the build. I won't place any columns there, but I'll have them on the corners of the bump outs so that that looks very continuous. And then of course we need them out front here too. And I'll just place one in the middle just like that. Of course we'll need to place some staircases as well. I'm not sure what color staircase I want to go for just yet, but I'm just going to place a few down anyway. And you can always very easily just replace them for a different color. What's also important is a cute little fence. This is one of my favorites to use. It's the simple picket fence from the base game. I just really like that one. I don't know why, but it's the one I gravitate towards the most. And then there is a matching staircase railing actually. So that is really nice. I will copy that fence over and just place it here. And I usually like to use this replace fence option. You can also place the fence by dragging. So if I were to have this selected, I would select my fence and then just drag it like this. But this replace fence function just makes it a little easier to kind of just automatically place it along the entire wall or edge of the porch in this case. And then you can very easily go through different types of fences and just replace it to see which one you like best. Another trick for porches that I like to do is I kind of want to use a little exterior trim across this roof section. It won't automatically place it because there's actually not a room under here, and that's what we're going to change. So if you change your wall view to walls down like this, and you go down to the second floor or up depending on where you were before. Press B to go into your walls and empty rooms menu. Select the flat square room down here. I always turn on the grid for this because it's just a lot easier. And then you can kind of place it here under the roof. And then you'll have to drag it into place. We can also copy this little room over to the back porch like this. And then you can select the exterior trim of your choice. For me, that's usually this first one right here because it's really small, but it definitely adds some detail. And then, as you can see, it actually goes around that little roof. And I just like that added detail. So this shell is definitely starting to look like a house, but it does look a little bit naked. So it's time to put down some wallpapers. For the exterior wallpapers, I normally like to combine at least 2, but usually no more than 3 different textures to keep things a little bit interesting but not too messy. Just like with creating the shell and doing the roofing, I normally like to start with the main body or the main shape of the house. So that would be this area right here. I do not have a plan for this, but maybe a blue suburban would be kind of a fun classic thing to do. So what I normally like to do is if I'm not sure what color or what textures I want to use, I'll just pick something I like, paint the entire house in that specific wallpaper to get a little bit of perspective, and then I will add different textures or like accent wallpapers later on. So right now it's completely blue and it's just a little bit too blue for my liking. There is not a whole lot going on. This can be very pretty. The more I look at it, the more I like it, to be honest. But for the sake of this video, I just want to add a little bit more texture and different accent wallpapers to the exterior. And I feel like bump outs are perfect for that. So let's say we want to combine this paneling with a brick. And I think I would like to go for maybe a brown, reddish brick. I think that would be kind of pretty. So this little bump out front here, we could easily give that its own wallpaper like this. And as you can see, immediately it just adds so much to the build. It's so much more personalized this way. And we can just kind of keep this going. Maybe this bump out needs to be brick too. I actually think that that looks really nice. And you know what? Let's just do that same thing here on the other side to even things out a little bit. We could also do this bump out up top, but I'm actually not sure about that. No, I liked that better with a blue paneling like this. Also, don't forget to paint the sides of the porch roofs. That is something that is very easy to look over, but yeah, make sure to paint those as well. If you do want to combine different textures like we did just now, I will mostly use heavier textures on the ground floor, the lower levels, and lighter textures like paneling on the upper levels. That's essentially what we're doing here. We're using brick on the ground floor and then a paneling on the second floor. We could definitely also do this the other way around like this. this. I don't think that looks wrong by any means, but there is just something about the heavier textures on the lower levels and the lighter textures on the upper levels that is just visually more pleasing in my honest opinion, but it is a really small detail, so it doesn't matter that much. I actually really do like how this looks right now. We can also use a different roof pattern. My go-to for houses like this, suburban houses that is usually this country carriage house roof. I've literally never ever paid attention to the name of that, but that's essentially what it's called. I just like the neutral roofs for houses like this. And this, for some reason, is just one of my go-tos, but that's just personal preference, of course. I do remember that back in the day, I used to use this one all the time. Wouldn't you wonder? Composite roof. I am probably not pronouncing that correctly. That's very pretty too. It's a little bit more of a modern approach. There's obviously different colors for this as well, but I'm kind of boring. Like, I like to have my gray or black basic roofs. I don't know. There's just something about it. It just looks good. Sometimes I'll go for an accent roof moment over the porches like this. I go for like a metal or something. That can definitely look cute. For this house, I think I'll just keep the same roof texture everywhere. And then very important as well are the roof trims. And you can definitely play around with this as well. My go-to is just white roof trims. It looks nice on this house because we have a lot of white details on this house. The windows are white, the fences, the columns, so that definitely looks good. But you could also go for a black trim so that it ties in with the roof itself a little bit better. I think that looks really nice as well. If we had brown windows on this house, for example, we were to go like this, then I feel like maybe a dark brown trim would look kind of good. That's not the vibe that we're going for right now though. So I think I'm just gonna change it back to white windows for this, and then a white roof trim. There's obviously different trims here that you can use. My go-to is this final one, the last one in the row. I'm not sure why, but it's also just a thing that I'm used to. I always go for this one, so that's just what I automatically click. But maybe you want a really thick trim like this. There is also these angled roof trims, and that just kind of makes them go inward, which also can look good. There is some like regular roof trims that are a little bit thicker than the ones we were just using. There is basically the default no trim, an angled out one. So there's definitely a bunch of different ones you can pick from, but for some reason I just like this one, the beveled out roof trim. It just looks sleek and it just sort of makes sense on most houses in my opinion. So there is that. Now, if you figured out the color scheme that you want for your house, you can obviously go through and like change the colors of the windows. Maybe you want a fun, colorful shutter moment. That is definitely something you can do. For this house, I'm just going to keep it basic though. I am going to go back to some exterior details because I feel like the front of this house just looks a little bit boring. I really like to use this wall vent on roofs like this. It just adds a little something that I always really enjoy. There are these decorative corbels that you can use as well. I normally like to alt place these so that they fit a little bit better, and then we can put that one a little lower. See, that definitely adds a little something to the house. If we size down one of those corbels and placed it on the ground floor, I think that looks really cute. And we can just go around and place this on the sides, of course, as well. Maybe another one of those vents here if we sized it down, or maybe here. Yeah, I think that looks nice. We could use some more flower boxes here. And then of course we also have to paint the foundation. Foundations is definitely something that I tend to struggle with sometimes. We could match it to the blue paneling like this. We could also opt for this white like lattice foundation or a brick one, which actually isn't bad for this one. Say you wanted to mix and match foundations. Maybe we wanted this blue foundation on this area, like the porch area of the house. You can hold down Shift on your keyboard and it will place by wall instead of per room. So as you can see, if I do not hold down Shift and I hover over this portion, you can see that it basically swaps out the foundation for this entire room. But if I hold down Shift, it will only swap it out for this one wall. And that actually works the same with placing down wallpapers. I actually kind of like the idea of mixing this brick foundation and this white wood foundation. So let's hold down Shift and I'll paint this section of the house. And then for the brick portion of the house, we can keep that brick foundation. So when we go to the back, I just am going to hold down Shift because I want to just swap out these two, and then I'll also place it around the porch like this. And this little wall right here. There we go. Flooring for the foundation is also nice. Usually I'll go for some sort of wood floor for the porches. Sometimes I'll do brick, but I think I would like to have a nice wood floor, a darker brown to kind of tie back into that brick that we're using. And I'll place that here in the back as well. I actually do happen to like the white staircases that I just placed to swap out later, so I think I'm just gonna keep those. Next up is landscaping, and this is what will really pull the exterior of the house together. One thing I'm noticing right off the bat is I feel like my house is a little bit, just ever so slightly too far forward on the lot, and you can very easily fix this by going over here to the move house or reposition your house option. I usually will go for move lot, but you can also go for move house and then click on the house, click this button to move it, and then you can basically just place it anywhere on the lot. The problem with that is, as you can see, I have sort of alt placed these corbels, so the game doesn't actually see them as part of the house. So you can see that my corbels are just kind of flying around here, and that's not what we want. So let's quickly undo that, and let's actually go for this move lot option. We can click this move button, and it essentially moves the entire lot with the house. I think I'm just gonna move it back one tile. I know it's barely noticeable, but it is noticeable, you know? And there we go. It's positioned a little bit more precisely where I want it. When it comes to landscaping, I'm definitely known to go overboard with plans and just make it very lush and overgrown. I'm going to try to not do that today. Now, there is an entire debug menu with free plants in this game. That is, I feel like, almost an entire video in and of itself, because there is basically so much that you can do with debug and there's so much to find. But if you want free landscaping, if you want debug landscaping, you're going to have to open your cheat panel thingy by pressing Ctrl-Shift-C on your keyboard. And you're going to have to type bb.show live edit objects. Press enter, and after that you'll type bb.show hidden objects. Press enter. Now, normally you can enter the debug menu by typing in debug here in your search bar and press one of the options. For me, it looks different right now because I have the mod Better Build By installed, which actually gives me organized debug, which is a whole video in and of itself again. So forgive me, my debug menu looks different and I can't access it the same way, but that's essentially how it works. And it'll show you all the debug items. I do have Better Build By installed, like I said, so I can just go into my little menu, like filter menu over here, and I can press debug and live edit. And then when I go to outdoor plants, it will automatically give me all these trees and plants sorted within the fitting categories, which is very helpful. And that's essentially what the Better Build By mod does. But normally after you have activated your live edit cheat and your hidden objects cheat, you can press again the search bar here, type in debug like this. It'll give you a debug option that you can click, and then the debug menu will essentially open. I can understand if this is a little bit too complicated, but that is a way to access free plants and free landscaping, which is useful for starter homes. To keep things simple, I will not be using debug today. We're just going to be using the plants that are available in the regular catalog. One thing I like to do with landscaping is to hide areas that I don't like with trees. It is something I do all the time. For example, I don't really like this area right here and how there's no window there. I tried to place a window there, but I just didn't really feel like it looked right. I could definitely do that. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but I also don't really like it. It bothers me slightly. So what I'll choose to do is I will get one of my all-time favorite trees out, which is this upright cypress tree or cypress tree, however you pronounce that. And then I can just place it right here. It is a little big, so I will size it down with my bracket key, and I will just kind of alt place it right here in a way where it doesn't really clip too much or show up on the inside. I don't really mind it clipping with the eaves of the roof, so we could just place it like that. And there we go. We have this really cute tree that is essentially just hiding this weird wall that I didn't like. It's very helpful. I'm kind of known to place these trees everywhere, the small version, but also the tall one. I just love how it fits in corners like this, and it just makes the build come to life. So don't mind me, I'll just be placing a couple of these trees. I know that they're blocking the view from this window, but it's something I really don't care about that much. I just like my tall trees. I also like to place these low-lying bushes to section off areas where I want there to be little flower beds like this, for example. Then I can place some really cute plants here close to the foundation. Maybe I want to size that one up. Honestly, landscaping for me, again, is just a bunch of trial and error and just trying different things until it looks cute. I think I want some more of these right here. Houses can get really expensive though if you do landscaping like this. If you are on a budget for your gameplay or whatever you're building for, then it can definitely get pretty expensive. But I usually like to not keep that in mind at all and just build. I will usually place my plants and my landscaping first and then go in with terrain paint later. But you can obviously also do it the other way around and basically map out your landscaping with your terrain paint, if you will. That's definitely a very clever way to do it. But again, I just like to use my low-lying bushes to section off little areas where I want there to be some flower beds and other landscaping. I do feel like alt placing is your best friend for landscaping because it just makes it look a little bit more natural. You have a lot more freedom to place things off the grid. Sizing things up and down is definitely also helpful for a little bit of a more natural look so that not all of the plants are the exact same or the exact same size. Maybe in the back here, we could do a little hedge. I think that would be pretty cute. To create a pathway up to the front door or the front porch of the house. For these worlds, Newcrest in particular, which is the world where we're building right now, there is a stone that is pretty similar to the sidewalk. So usually I'll just use that and have it connect to the sidewalk like that. I feel like that looks pretty natural and it just blends in nicely. But as you can see, the edges of this pathway just kind of look a little bit, it looks a little bit too artificial almost. So to make it blend in, what I like to do is go over the edges with terrain paint. I will usually go for this like soil one. You can adjust the softness and the smoothness and stuff and like the brush size here. So I like to go to the softest mode. So I'm just going to drag this all the way over to the right and I'll use this smaller circular brush and then I'll just drag it along the edges here a few times, undo it if I don't like it. But as you can see, it just kind of blends it in a little bit better, just like that. I think that looks a little bit more natural. And then I will adjust my brush size, make it quite big actually, maybe a little smaller. And I will adjust this to a little bit more harsh or less soft, I should say, and go over my flower beds until I get that nice edge around it. And I like to just do that alongside the entire edge of the house, even when there are no plants, just to make it blend into the ground a little bit better, if that makes sense. It just makes everything look a little bit more natural. As you can see, it really creates this nice border or like little edge around the landscaping around the house that's just very pleasing to the eye. Something a lot of people don't seem to realize is that there's actually an eraser tool for terrain paint. So if you did something that you just really do not like, you can obviously undo it, but you can also use the eraser tool and just erase the parts that you don't like. It's very self-explanatory. I feel like we all know what an eraser is, but it seems like a lot of people don't know that that tool exists, but it's there. Now, I definitely want to section off a backyard for this house. So let's use this fence. And what I like to do when it comes to drawing a fence for the backyard and connecting it to the house, you want to start away from the house and then drag it to connect to the house. If you start at the corner of the house, the fence will automatically be placed on a foundation to match the house, which I, in most cases, don't want. In some cases, I do want that, but not in this case, not usually. So I will start away from the house and drag it to connect, and we can just kind of go from there. You can just follow the lot like this and create a square backyard. There is definitely absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I like to create a little bit of shape usually. So maybe I'll just do this, create some sort of bump out. Maybe I'll get rid of this portion here, sort of like a gate without a gate. And then there's a little bit more shape to it, which I personally kind of enjoy. We can go back to the outdoor plants. Maybe we can put a pretty tree in the corner like this. This is one of my all-time favorite trees too. I just love it so much. And once you have the shape of your backyard done, you can just kind of go back to landscaping. Maybe you want there to be another section of flowers and plants here right by this tree. I think that could be pretty nice. So I'm just going to border that with these low-lying bushes and just place some pretty flowers and things to kind of fill that up. Again, it's a lot of trial and error and repositioning plants for me normally, but I really like that sculpting with plants. I'm not sure how else to put it. It's just like with creating a shell. It's like molding something, like molding clay. I really enjoy it. And then of course, going back to that terrain paint to make everything blend in properly, I will drag the terrain paint all the way under the fence as well for that same smooth blended look and feel. Now, maybe we would like to have a little terrace in the backyard. I think I'm just going to copy over these sidewalk slabs that we used at the front and create a little terrace like this. That's actually not that little, but that could actually be kind of nice to have. I might want to move this staircase over here. I feel like that looks a little better. We could obviously center it as well and just opt for 2 columns or go like this. I think that might actually be cute for the back porch. Let's go for this option. Maybe adjust my plants ever so slightly. And then something I like to do with my terraces like this is I like to select this smooth keeper fence, which is a very low fence that Sims can actually step over. And then I like to just drag it across the edge here, and we can do the same thing here. I just like the extra texture that it gives, and it's a small detail, but I feel like it makes a big difference. And then of course I'll go in with my terrain paint ever so slightly to blend it in nicely. And there you go. I feel like that is a really nice backyard. Of course it's missing furniture, but I always do the backyards last. If you're already busy with landscaping in the backyard, you might as well just go in and furnish it, but for some reason, I just always like to come back to that later. It looks like the exterior of this house is completely finished. Aside from some decorations, of course, I placed a mailbox and also an outdoor trash can, so that is all set. And then we're basically ready to decorate. Something that's important but easily overlooked is lighting. So I've made it a habit to just, before I dive into the interior, place some outdoor lights by both the front door and also by the back door, if there is one, so that we have that covered. You can go through and just place some really cute outdoor lights, maybe in the yard like this, just scatter them around a little bit. And then we're essentially ready to decorate. So first, I think I'm just going to get rid of my filler furniture, aside from the fireplace, because I actually really like that one. And then I'll go through and place some lights on the inside as well. So I like to use this super subtle saucer light for that. It's really small. And just place 1 or 2 lights, depending on the size of the room, in each room so that we can actually see what we're doing. So for an overall cohesive look, I like to continue my exterior color scheme on the inside of the house as well, to an extent, of course, but it's something I like to keep in mind. So as you can see, I went for a darker wood floor. We're using that on the porches, and I used a grayish blue wallpaper here in the living room, which ties back into the blue paneling that we're using. And then for the kitchen here, we have that same wooden floor here in the dining area, and then a neutral color tile. And I used this wallpaper that kind of ties into the color of the brick. I might swap this out for a nice backsplash in the kitchen, but that's something I like to play around with later once I've actually placed the cabinets and stuff. So as you can see, the exterior and interior are pretty cohesive that way. Kids and teens rooms, on the other hand, will have their own color schemes for more personality. So this kids room, for example, has a more playful wallpaper, and then there is a slightly different color here in what's going to be the teens room to just add a little bit more personality. When it comes to placing furniture, just like with the floor plan, what I like to keep in mind is the overall flow of the house to make sure that it's easy for Sims to route and move around. Sims and their movements actually can take up quite a bit of space, so it's nice to keep things a little bit more spacious and not too cramped together. or if you want to actually use your build for gameplay, that is. Sometimes it's just fun to build for aesthetics and have everything be very cluttered and cramped, but when it comes to gameplay, I like to keep things a little bit more spacious. So for example, I placed a 3-seater couch and then a chair here. I could swap out that chair for, say, a love seat. These don't match, but it's just to show you. As you can see though, this closes off the living room area quite a bit. So you could either opt for a love seat over on this side to open things up a little bit more, but as you can see, that is a little bit cramped with the windows and like it just doesn't line up that well. So instead, I will opt for a chair over here to keep this nice and open and easy for Sims to route around. What's also helpful is creating a focal point. That is going to be the main element that immediately draws attention. So here in the living room, for example, I placed this fireplace, which your eye is kind of just drawn to immediately. So we have that placed and then we can build the living room around that. So here I am decorating the rest of the living room. For gameplay functionality, I'm keeping things fairly simple while still trying to make it look lived in by placing some clutter on the coffee table, for example. The color scheme is fairly neutral, which always works, while sprinkling in some blue and brown/tan tones. A few staples I like to go for in spaces like this one is a functional bookcase for reading, obviously a TV in the living room, and a nice entryway. When I can, I actually like to go for closed off entryways, but for this house, that didn't really work out. So I just placed my go-to end table, mirror, and coat rack by the front door. For the kitchen, you can see that the window placement makes it really easy to place the countertops and appliances. I will show you how that worked out in a second. So I kept this layout nice and simple, but the routing over here is going to be very easy. We have a nice and spacious entryway over here where I just placed a coat rack and stuff, and then your Sims can very easily just walk over here, sit down on the couch, watch some TV. This TV, by the way, is from the Cozy Rewards that are currently going, so it's a very beautiful frame TV kind of thing that I loved, and I just placed that over the fireplace. And then I went for this layout in the kitchen. So we have would you call this an L-shaped kitchen, or is this more of like a U-shaped kitchen? I'm not exactly sure, but it's a very open, nice kitchen. It is not too big. As you can see, my window placement was nice and easy to work with here. I explained that as we were placing the windows, but I placed them on full tiles so that I knew they would actually align with my counters and it would be very easy to place overhead cabinets around the windows as well. So that was pretty easy to work with. And I actually have the space for a 6-seater dining table here. This area is a little bit more cramped, but still it's easy to route around. I could also place the table this way around, but as you can see, that just feels a little bit more like it's blocking the way to the back door. So instead I place it like this. It's still a little cramped, but it works a little bit better. For the rest of the interior, I'll talk you through this little speed build. I finished up the dining room by alt placing some china cabinets to make it look like one bigger piece. I also alt placed them slightly closer to the wall to keep the room nice and spacious. Additionally, I added a nice rug under the dining table to pull the colors together. In real life, a rug under the dining table might not be the most functional thing to have, especially with kids in the house, but thankfully in The Sims, those things just don't matter. I added some art on the wall, a light in the corner, and of course some bar seats by the island counters. Of course, I placed some extra appliances and clutter in the kitchen. For placing clutter more precisely on the counter, I actually snapped this utensil holder to the countertop, dragged the countertop away, picked up the clutter piece while holding down Alt so that it stays on the same level, Alt placed it where I wanted it to go, and then put the counter back. This is a fun trick if you want to place clutter a little bit more precisely on items they will normally snap to. I turned this extra room downstairs into a small office, which is great for gameplay. I added a computer and an art corner for an additional skill building item. This room is pretty versatile. You could turn it into whatever skill building room you need, a tiny home gym, for example, or maybe place a chess table or a bonsai tree, or you could turn it into an extra bedroom if necessary. If possible, I like to make sure that my homes have a spare room like this one, so there is room for your household to grow and you don't necessarily need to move right away when your Sims have a couple of babies. I don't know about you, but somehow my Sims always end up with twins or triplets when I do not have the space for them, so this is helpful. This house also has a pretty spacious hall bathroom downstairs. Of course, we have this small hallway leading to it, which I just decorated with a chair in the corner and a little plant. The bathroom was a bit too spacious for my liking, so something I like to do in this situation is to close off a corner in the room and fill it up with a platform. This creates a bit more shape to the room and makes it easier to furnish, in my opinion. If you have laundry day, I feel like this more spacious bathroom would make a really cute bath/laundry room. I just placed a few extra decorations in the bathroom to make it look lived in, and after that we're moving on to the second floor, starting off with a landing. Depending on the size, this can sometimes be a tough space to decorate. I just don't always know what I want to place here. This one turned out to be spacious, so in addition to my classic bookshelf and plant, I went for an extra study space to demonstrate an alternate area for a computer if you needed the spare room downstairs for something else. I didn't actually place an extra computer here because we don't really need it, and expensive items like that do drive up the price of the house quite a bit, but it's a good option. Next up is the main bedroom of the house, which I turned into the parents' room. I like to somewhat match the color scheme of the main bedroom to the rest of the house because to me that just makes sense. It's probably the parents that picked out most of the colors and decorations for the house, so I like to continue that same style in their bedroom. I do like to go for a warm-toned version of the color scheme if possible, or at least something that combines well with the rest of the house for a cozy look and feel, which is something I usually look for in bedrooms. This room also has an ensuite bathroom. If I have multiple bathrooms in the house, which is usually the case with medium-sized family homes like this one, I go for the same flooring, wallpaper, and plumbing in each bathroom for consistency. I use different details and decorations for each bathroom though to kind of show who it's for. I'll use more colorful towels and clutter in the kids' bathroom, for example. Speaking of kids, next up is the kids' bedroom, and I went for a shared room because this one is quite spacious. In reality, you'd probably expect for the older sibling to have the larger bedroom, but in The Sims, I usually do it the other way around. I feel like kids need a lot more space versus teens, for example, since you probably want to give them a couple of toys and skill building items. Toys are quite bulky in this game, and if you want them to be functional, they need a bit of space. Now that we have lofted beds in the game though, it's fairly easy and not as space consuming to create a shared bedroom for children. I definitely gave these kids quite a bit of space to play around and put in a creativity table, toy box, and stuffed animal. The middle of the room is nice and open, so the kids have enough room to play. I try to give teens and kids rooms their own color schemes to add some personality, so as you can see, these rooms definitely do not match the rest of the house. This teen's bedroom is quite a bit smaller than the kids' room, but teens really don't need a lot of stuff usually, depending on their hobbies of course, but this definitely works out. I went for a blue and pink color scheme in this teen's room and gave them their own desk so they have a place to sit down and do their homework. The rug that I used in this room is my go-to base game rug for teens rooms. The swatches are great and there's a lot of different colors to pick from. I did size it down once by pressing the left square bracket key on my keyboard. I put a guitar in the room for a fun activity and skill building item. Then lastly, we have a hall bathroom upstairs, mainly for the kids and teen to use. As you can see, I copied over all the plumbing items from the parents' bathroom to keep that consistent look and layout. I did have room for a fun extra cabinet in this bathroom for some additional storage. That is actually it for the interior. Okay, so we're almost there. The entire interior is finished. We just have a final few decorations to place here and there. So my go-to thing to do for front porches is I'll normally just place a little plant in the corner, a welcome mat, which this new one is really cute. It's just like the TV. This one's from the cozy rewards that are currently going. So I'm gonna place one of those. Whenever I have the space, I'll do maybe a cute little chair here out front. This is definitely my signature go-to front porch decoration. I don't know why, but I just feel like that looks pretty cute. And then of course we have the back. The backyard for this house is actually pretty massive. So there's a bunch of things you can do here. The back porch is only very small, but we can place another outdoor trash can here so that your Sims don't need to walk all the way over there to like the sidewalk to empty their trash cans, but they can just use this. Maybe your Sims are into gardening, and in that case, it's nice to have a couple of planters here under cover. If you have seasons, then you know that that's pretty helpful to have. We have a massive terrace here. So how about we just put a grill, maybe in this corner over here. An outdoor dining table could be good with a few chairs, obviously. Since we're just using the base game, we don't have that much outdoor furniture to use. But one of my go-to things is I'll just use these base game indoor sofas as outdoor furniture. I feel like that goes pretty well. I mean, it's not perfect, but this one's even better actually. This more expensive sofa, I feel like can definitely pass for outdoor furniture. So how about we just place a few of those? A nice coffee table could be good. Another one of those plants. It's a bit bare, but you get the general idea. Just a cozy outdoor living space, essentially, is what we're doing here. And since we have all this grass, like all this empty space here, we can very easily place a little play area for the children. We do have 2 kids and a teenager, so it's nice for the kids to have an area to play. You could go crazy and like put a hot tub, but I don't really want to do that right now. I think it would be nice to have an additional gardening area. Maybe like right here, we can move this over a little bit more. And maybe, you know, just a few loungers to hang out in the sun. And then that is your perfect suburban home. We built this entire thing together and I really hope that this was helpful for you. Just a little tip or something I would like to say is The Sims 4, it's just a game. You're supposed to have fun with this and it's not that serious. So please have fun with it. That is, like I said, definitely the most important thing. Another thing that's definitely difficult is to stop comparing your builds to other people's builds. There's clearly nothing wrong with wanting to learn and wanting to get better at building, but again, the most important part is that you have fun with it. And last but not least, embrace your own style and creativity. As you're practicing building, you'll see that you'll start to discover your own style and your own preferences. Embrace that. It's so much fun. But that's going to do it for this build guide. I really hope this was helpful. If you have any other questions or if you have any suggestions on other things that you would like to see guides on or tutorials for, by all means, please let me know in the comment section down below. You can download all my builds, including this one on the gallery. My username on the gallery is SimmerySims. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you'd like. My username on there is SimmerySims as well. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, feel free to do so. And if you'd like to get notified of every single time I upload a video, just click that little bell icon and you should be fine. I also live stream over on Twitch a few times a week, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and give me a follow over on twitch.tv/SimmerySims. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!